Scott just made the point Jefferson seems to be a lot more secure, not just...
Mitt's out, Hillary's on hold, and their competitors are and are not racing around Iowa's cornfields. It's a crazy time, and, well, you know what that means. With a weary heart and a pocket full of polls, it's time for the countdown to 2016 to begin now. I'm Steve Green, this is Trifecta, and with me today, of course, my partners in prognostication, my fellows in forecasting, my divers into divination, my peeps in prophecy, Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. Gentlemen, I have the Trifecta triple this week, and it's going to take us at least 3 segments to cover all this ground. We'll take on the Democrats in Part 2. Part 3 is members only, as always, and in that one we're going to put together dream tickets for both parties. But today, in Part 1, it's all about the GOP hopefuls. So I saw some fascinating poll numbers from Bloomberg and the Des Moines Register, and it looks like Iowa is smack dab in the middle of a mini Scott Walker surge. And this is on the heels of Jeb Bush supposedly having the name and the money to sew this thing up before it even begins. Now, that poll puts Walker ahead of Romney, who dropped out just one day after it was completed, way ahead of Jeb Bush, but up only within the margin error over Rand Paul. Now, Marco Rubio, Rick Santorum, Chris Christie, they're all basically no-shows in this poll. Bill, these numbers are far too early to tell us who's going to win Iowa just 52 weeks from now. But what does it tell you about the mood of Iowa caucus goers?
Well, it may say something about being a little more moderate. I mean, we don't have any firebrands. You know, Ted Cruz is wouldn't call him a friend of mine, but I've certainly spent some time with him. And I admire Ted very much. I like the things that Ted has to say. But the fact that he or Rand Paul are not leading the pack is telling me that we're not really looking for so much an ideological firebrand as maybe somebody a little more in the middle, a little more palpable. I happen to, on reflection, think that Scott Walker is going to be a superb candidate, mostly because of his record, and his record is a result of his unique personality traits. First of all, I wouldn't mind having a governor again back as president. Having had a senator for 6 years now without any experience whatsoever in actually running things, I think the idea of a governor is definitely the kind of prerequisite you want for a president. Basically, a governor does everything on a small scale that a president's going to have to do on a somewhat larger scale, but the management skills and all the other compromise skills and so on are there. A senator doesn't have to have any of those abilities, so there's that. But I think the real thing about Scott Walker is, you know, Scott Walker's success story is really remarkable. Went into a blue state with a horrible budget deficit. The bad guys put every chip they had on the table in to defeat him again and again and again, and he just came out of it with the win. So I think maybe it's his moderation and his lack of ideological fire that will perhaps give him a chance to accomplish so many of the conservative things that he's actually done in Wisconsin. I mean, that's really a remarkable, almost unbelievable success story he's had there.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's been sort of a will-o'-the-wisp for Republican presidential candidates for 3 or 4 cycles now. And he might be the guy to turn that around. You know, maybe the most interesting thing about this poll is that it also asks voters who their second choice would be if they couldn't vote for their first choice. And only one candidate saw a significant gain as the second choice. That was Marco Rubio. Most everybody else lost support, sometimes major support, except for not sure and for no answer. Scott, it looks like there's a wide open field of a dozen or more candidates here. Is this an embarrassment of riches, or as you look at some of these guys, is it just an embarrassment?
Well, I should hope that it would be a wide open field this far out. I think most of these names, while we're very familiar with them, we are pathetic political geeks who spend our lives reading about this stuff and talking about this stuff. Most people, as we've said often before on Trifecta, are out there just living life and not just, you know, engaging in this sort of horse race gambling ring that we've got going here. You know, and as far as somebody coming in, you know, they're everybody's favorite second place pick. Well, as you know from the old NASCAR driver, second place is merely first place among the losers. So that doesn't really count for anything. You know, it's interesting, though. Scott Walker, for all the fine things about Scott Walker, I think more than anything right now, what this poll may show is that Wisconsin and Iowa share a river border that's about 100 miles long, and Madison is only about 92 miles from Dubuque.
Yeah. Yeah, good neighbors. Good rivers make good neighbors? No, that's not how that goes. All right, folks, this is one weird poll, even for this being a year out. Let's leave out Carly Fiorina, Bobby Jindal, John Kasich, Donald Trump, because whether you love them or hate them, none of them are probably going to go very far. Then what you're left with is 2 or 3 candidates fighting for the Tea Party vote, 2 candidates representing the social conservative wing, and 3 former or current governors who might best be described as practical candidates since they've done the hard job of actually governing. And I'll add, with all due snark, that the GOP's money wing is being represented by a former governor with a famous name who, well, hasn't run a race since 2002 and whose base is pretty much limited to GOP money men. So, who wins, who loses? Well, nobody knows. But Iowa is shaping up to give the GOP the kind of real and hopefully honest debate any healthy party should want and certainly needs, especially in times like ours. And that stands in very stark contrast to the non-debate going on over on the Democratic side, but that we're going to get to in part 2, so stay tuned. For Scott Ott and Bill Whittle, I'm Steve Green.